Thank you so much for taking time and really wonderful presentation from the people who presented before. Two more people, really very insightful, and really I'm impressed with the information what they are sharing. Hopefully, our conversation will be more interesting as well because we have a lot of questions and expecting more answers from you as the experts. Let's have a quick introduction before we move on. We have some more time. Let me quickly introduce myself. This is Chitra Imani, and I'm the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer from InfoVision, heading the innovation unit of Digit7. Digit7 is a subsidiary company of InfoVision, and I'm the CEO of Digit7 too. And apart from that, I have been handling multiple companies as active CTO. We are very focused on innovation, especially in multiple domains, healthcare, retail, as well as telecom. We have been focusing. Over to the people as well. Please start from Mitul Shah. Please, can you have a quick introduction?
Yes, thank you for the introduction. My name is Mitul Shah. I am the Vice President for AI Products at Proscia. At Proscia, we are a company that develops software for the digital pathology sector. And we develop the platform to be able to read and diagnose digital pathology images, as well as use and be able to develop and use AI technology that supports the lab and pathologists. I'm pleased to be here and looking forward to this session.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitul. Rich?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thank you for the opportunity to join you all. My name is Rich Kinney. I'm a nurse by background and now act as informaticist and a healthcare industry advisor to SaaS. I imagine everybody on here knows, or at least should know, of SaaS. We've been doing AI before it was cool, back when it was called just statistics, for the last 40 years. And so in a lot of ways, the founder and the future of analytics, we're doing a lot of very interesting things. Most of our innovation and where we lead in this space has been in other industries. I think, frankly, just because the technology in healthcare and some of the challenges have impeded growth in healthcare. So I'm really excited to be joining the rest of you all today and to be able to talk about how we're seeing AI starting to really advance and mature in the healthcare space.
Thank you, Rich. Hi, Natasha. Quick intro. You're on mute, Natasha.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize you were talking to me. Good morning, everybody. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you all today. I'm Natasha Schlenker, CEO and founder of Innobot Health. We do robotic process automation and specialize in revenue cycle management, particularly. I've got over 25 years of just trying to identify and fix barriers to physicians and healthcare systems being reimbursed. And so we're really excited to share what we're doing in robotic process automation.
Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. Ty Wachan.
Hello, my name is Ty. I'm a radiologist by training, and that's why I have a giant computer behind me there. For the last several years, I've been working on ways to get AI in healthcare working, and it's really cool to see on this conference. We've seen for American Sign Language, we've seen for mental health, we're seeing for automation for lots of things here. So this is an exciting time to be a part of it, and I'm part of a company that's looking to apply it to telemedicine as well, and we'll talk about that a bit more. Good to see everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ty. I think, Jayodita, you are not on video. Could you please enable your video as well? And you are on mute too.
I think she joined and maybe, yeah, she's here now. Yeah.
She there? I don't see her.
I can see her. Maybe she's having some technical issues. She will join back.
That's fine. Let me start with.
Yeah.
Good morning, and let's start the discussion quickly. Let's go for it. I know healthcare industry is very critical, especially after COVID. I'm not using the word after COVID, still it's COVID. It's a new version is keep coming up. I'm waiting for the word, hey, after COVID, everything changed. I'm waiting for the timeline when it is going to be. Every 3 months, I'm very, just keep coming. People are a little bit tired of. And definitely healthcare industry is one of the saver, how to save the people. Really, a lot of healthcare people, even nurses, healthcare providers, doctors. Really, I want to take a time to thank all of them at this moment. Your services were really incredible for the last 2 years. Because I have been gone through recently, I got COVID Omicron. I came out of it, but I know the really how it happened, how it is worked. Thank you so much for all of your services. And let's start from the question. It's both the question pros and cons questions will be there in this channel, in this panel. Okay, the first question, let me start with. Who will benefit from AI in healthcare industry? So I know some smiles from the faces. Let's start with Rich. It's a very hypothetical question. I know that because it's maybe patients or the providers or who's really getting benefit out of it, enabling AI.
Yeah, I laugh because the immediate answer is like everyone, right? For many years, at least in the healthcare space, we often talk, or we heard from the Institute of Medicine around the triple aim, right, when that first released. At least in the healthcare provider world, we quickly expanded that to the quadruple aim. And I think it's a very important distinction. And so maybe I'll start there a bit and some others can add on some commentary from there. But if we look at that, for those who might be unfamiliar with that, we talk about the need for healthcare to reduce cost, to improve quality, and to enhance the patient experience. That fourth aim is about also remembering that the clinician or the provider's experience is also important in this. What we've done historically over the last 10 years with all this EMR effort it's been largely at the expense of the clinicians as we've subjected them into becoming nothing more than data entry specialists. And I think that's what's most encouraging and most promising from my point of view as far as who stands to gain from the advances in AI. Are the clinicians and actually improving their workflow, getting them back to practicing what we call top of license. And Ty, I'd love for you to kind of chime in and hear a little bit from your experience and what you're doing as a radiologist with telehealth, but then those other pieces as well. So if we talk about patient experience, and I think to your point, with regard to the pandemic, I think we've shifted that, rightly so, into a conversation about access and equity. And so patients have a lot to gain as well in the ways that we apply AI, in many of the ways that Lynn kind of speaks to and teed us up for this conversation. So the short answer is everybody.
What about Natasha?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Rich. Definitely. The patient obviously is the top priority. They're the reason we're all doing what we do every day. And the providers, and then all of the office managers, the C-level executives, and the end users that are, they're overworked, especially in the staffing shortages. We talk about the pandemic and the impact that it's had on the healthcare world. People are overworked. They're working long hours. They're working on the weekends. Their families are not getting to spend time with them because we just have to get the things done that we have to get done so we can continue to treat patients and evolve the healthcare across the globe. And so I would say even those that are not involved directly in healthcare, the families, the children, the husbands and wives that are waiting for their families to come home. So literally everybody.
True. Mithul, before Mithul start, still I have a point. The investment on all this AI is still, we are incurring from the patient only. That's what that's what I'm trying to get the point of. The real advantage, who is taking care of it? It's really a patient or a company who is investing on the AI. These are the kind of hypothetical questions going on. Please go ahead, Mithul. Just I want to put the point here.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I would say ultimately we're all here to be able to provide the patient with the best experience and best quality healthcare, period. In order to do that, you need individuals, nurses, lab technicians, pathologists, other physicians who are critical in the life cycle to be able to provide that quality care to the patient. So if AI, another tool, can help them, then we're accomplishing our objective. So what needs to be done is we need to be able to prove at scale that AI actually does make a difference, that can help, as Rich and Natasha mentioned, it can help the physician or the first line of providing quality care to the patient, to be able to do that at scale. And then I believe at the end of the day, the patient will benefit. But it takes the individuals who are actually practicing to be able to actually validate that concept.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ty, in your point of view, what do you think about this question?
One of the things that we all know on this panel that hopefully we can continue to educate the rest of the patients is AI does great at solving one problem, and we've got like 20 million problems in healthcare. So it's going to take a lot of people like us on the call and people listening on the call to focus on one specific thing, maximize results, and get great results for the patient. And remembering we're all patients too. So as we're kind of going through our journey as patients, hopefully we can use those lessons and have good feedback loops. So I just would like to just say to anyone who's kind of listening, there's lots of problems to solve. So buckle up and let's work on this together.
Sure. I think Jayodit is also back, but she might have missed the question. That's fine. But I want to give some statistical information about the reason for the question. It takes normally 12 years any kind of drug research taking from lab to patient. Right? That is the industry trend currently. And apart from that, if you are more than 5,000, if you take about 5,000 research are going on, only 5 medicines are reaching the preclinical to human trial. Okay, think about the timing, investment companies are investing. It is close to each drug, at least around 349 million, 350 million needed to bring into the human reach. That's why the investment is heavy on that side. So hopefully AI will help to reduce this timeline, cost, everything. That's what the industry speech is going on currently. That's really evident as well recent time of COVID time, and which the vaccines came up very quickly within 1 year. Okay, the next question I would like to move on. What will be the impact be on doctors and other healthcare workers using AI?
Yeah, I think when we talk about the impact, as I was kind of mentioning before, looking at all the people that are working so hard all the time, trying to get through all of the massive volumes, particularly through this pandemic, the impact is really taking a toll. It's taking a toll on the administrative staff, the front office staff, the nurses, et cetera. And I think when we look at the cost of healthcare as a whole, AI is really impacting the cost of healthcare to a point where we're going to see a lot more access to healthcare in rural areas because the cost to deliver healthcare as a whole will be reduced over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, quickly take on.
I will. Sorry, I was going to chime in on this one too. Sorry for joining a bit late. I'm Jayodita, and I work at Included Health, where we try to help members route through this complicated healthcare system. To add to what Natasha just said, I think AI definitely helps drive down the cost of healthcare, making more accessible to populations at large. AI also enables us to deliver more aspects of virtual care, which, to your point, Natasha, is going to help enable care to more rural areas as well. I think beyond that also, it helps make the system more efficient. So if you can get people to the right care for them faster than them having to maybe go through a number of different providers to get there, basically optimizing their route to get to the right answers and the right treatments, and you remove that waste, you can actually make each of the providers in the system more efficient in themselves. You can help them kind of take on the cases that they actually are interested in and kind of trained to go address versus a lot of what they currently do, which is kind of also figuring out some of the inefficiencies in the system, paperwork, etc. So we can take the supply that we do have and make all of them more powerful.
True, absolutely.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think what you said, Joe, is correct. The ability to triage, to be able to take a large sum of data that exists that is prone to human error, and have AI employed to be able to triage and be able to classify and be able to auto route to the right individuals, so that specialists are seeing more in depth, more specific cases that are more probably associated with them, and be able to route other tasks or other responsibilities to other individuals where it makes it more important. That's just the first layer of what AI can do. Beyond that, then there's an option to diagnose and to be able to predict. And those are the three levers that we kind of run as in terms of our philosophy of how AI can actually impact the pathology sector at Proscia.
True. Absolutely. So quick question on, I know I wanted to make sure the statement, you mentioned that AI is improving, but what will happen if AI detection went wrong? What is the impact? Have you guys, anyone faced it in your real time or anywhere in these use cases?
This has been pretty prevalent in the radiology space because radiology was in the media for the last couple of years, and the vendors, and now I'm on both sides, I'm a radiologist and I'm a vendor. The vendors always say, "Oh, it's up to you and your medical license. Good luck." And so that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And so ultimately, yeah, my name's at the bottom of the report, so it's my responsibility. And so I think that's why when I was saying we need to focus really specific on specific things. So if there's an AI algorithm for multiple sclerosis or lung cancer, I need to use it as the provider to get super comfortable so I know when it's outside of its guardrails and I need to put my doctor hat back on and rein it back in. So ultimately it's going to be up to the provider because we don't have another system yet. But hopefully vendors understand that, we're people too, and we want to do a good job for the patients, and we can collaborate with vendors and providers to make sure that it's as safe as possible for the most amount of people.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. And one quick question. With a significant increase
chime in and add to that.
Recently, go ahead, Rich.
Oh, just to kind of tack on to what Ty is saying, and even tie back to Lynn's presentation earlier about, there's a subtle description when he was calling AI augmented intelligence. And I think it's important for us to use that language. The intent is not to replace a provider or a decision maker. It's to augment them. In a lot of the ways in which we've deployed AI in healthcare, it's doing that. It's surfacing these suggestions or these recommendations, these scores, these risks, or what have you. But it's all to augment the providers in their decision making. And we don't want to lose sight of that. To that end, that also means that we, as the technologists, have to make sure that there's explainability in what we're doing. This notion of black box AI, that's where the problems are. And so that's one thing, is making sure that what we're developing when we're applying these advanced analytic techniques, that we're creating it in a way that is explainable and easy to understand for a non-technologist, so that they know how to then interpret those results.
True, absolutely. And as I start the question, with the significant increase in telemedicine visit recent days, most of them are virtual, right? What are some useful ways to evaluate the new digital audio and video data? Ty, you would like to take it?
So this is a good extension from what Len was talking about. One of his really specific things was teasing out some of the sentiment data, how connected is the provider and the patient. And this kind of ties in a lot of things we're talking about. If there's an EHR over here that I need to fiddle with, patient's like, hey, I'm over here. This is where my eyes are. And so particularly in the last 2 years, we've had to go from human beings where we get and talk and meet people and touch, and now we spend a lot of time on the computer. And so there's a lot of opportunity to collect video data, audio data, to try and capture how empathetic is the provider, how much does the patient understand what the provider's saying. So it's and we all know providers that don't do a great job of this in person, and then it makes it even trickier putting a screen and a camera and da-da-da. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of data points that we can collect to help guide some of the providers that don't quite know how to zoom their way through the days as smoothly as others.
But don't you think the in-person physical examination is way better than your virtual examination? Even we and all, as you mentioned, all of us are really patient, no question, one way or other way. But we feel more better when the doctor sees us in the physical. Any problem is way important, better than the virtual side. So
this is a great question. So we're tending to put that in the box of something you need a physical exam. A mental health encounter, there doesn't need to be a physical touch. And so this gets a great point to even what Matul was saying, touch points in medicine. If you sprain your ankle, you need to see someone who's going to exam. But if you're feeling anxious and depressed, you could probably do this online. And so putting the right patient with the right person at the right time is something we do a terrible job at, just absolutely terrible. And that's one thing that we can use to help. So if telemedicine can help get the person to the right place at the right time, then that's a huge step in the right direction right there.
To add to what Ty is saying, I think virtual care also really fundamentally helps address the access problem. So Ty gave the behavioral health example where we have a shortage of behavioral health specialists in the United States today, especially in pockets of the country. There's also a convenience factor. People work basically the exact same hours where providers are available. So it's really hard for them to schedule appointments and get in, especially in a timely fashion. So much of the country does not have a regular primary care physician today. And a big part of that is because it is hard for them to get into care. And so virtual care does open a lot of new doors for care that was not available just with in-person care. And if we can figure out the right model of using the two together, it can be really.
Yeah, that's really important, Jayadita. And I think when we talk about that, and we're also talking about how we support providers, and we talk about value-based care, and that's been such a huge talk, and particularly in some states like in California, there's a lot more of that value-based care, P4P, HEDIS, where you have to meet a specific measure and treat so many patients, but it's difficult getting a hold of the patients, getting them into the office. And so I think this really helps to increase that preventative medicine, which truly does help reduce the hospital visits, ER visits, et cetera, because we're capturing things earlier. And then back to, Ty's point on mental health, I think a lot of patients that have some of those mental health conditions don't really like to be around people. They don't want to get out and, have to go. It creates more anxiety for them trying to get to the doctor's office and be there. And they're worried about, COVID and other illnesses. And so when we open up that telemedicine, it's just another avenue. And it doesn't necessarily, and to Matul's point, it doesn't necessarily take away from that we still have doctor's offices that are open and there are those face-to-face visits, but it's just another avenue in parallel.
But what are the challenges? I know we are talking about all advantage about the telemedicine. What are some challenges to leveraging telemedicine audio and video data? So any point?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I implemented the telemedicine platform for a very large wound care physician that was in 27 states and over 300 providers. And so when the pandemic first hit, it was really challenging because when you think about wound care, a lot of those patients are Medicare, they're elderly patients, and their technology understanding can be quite challenging. And so trying to find, a next of kin or somebody that can help them get through that. And then you have to be able to see the wound. And then sometimes there's debridement or those kinds of things that you have to navigate with, either a home health provider or something like that. So I think technology can be challenging, but the further we get into the future and the more we help patients embrace it, I think that we'll see that start to be more accepted.
Sorry, Ty, any points from your side?
Again, stemming from what Len was talking about, so they have a really specific niche where they're working with behavioral health, mental health on their kind of patient journey. If we wanted to evaluate everyone's audio and video, there's some privacy concerns, there's some security concerns. There are things that we need to obviously address before we can make that scalable to everybody. And ideally, the things that Len's talking about is available to everyone, not just people on that exact mental health kind of treatment pathway. So that there's security and compliance stuff that we've had to learn over the last couple of years that weren't really around before, at least not at the same scale. And quite frankly, like in the hospital, like in the clinical setting, like there are some pretty old things that we need to rethink to hopefully modernize in-person and telemedicine care too.
True.
Yeah,
I definitely on the language. Yes, is one of the big important problem. Recently, I faced it too. Yes, please go ahead, Natasha. Thanks, Natasha.
Yeah. Sorry. And one of the things is, like patient forms, consent forms, et cetera. So a lot of the hospitals and in-person visits, to Ty's point, is still on paper. And then those are scanned in. It's crazy. You would think that it's not, but when you go in and you're doing some audits and analysis at various different healthcare systems, it really is. And so trying to transition from some of those older ways.
Sure. Rich, any point about this challenges of telemedicine data, video and audio?
Yeah, I mean, I look at video and audio as another data type, just like we've talked about free text. The biggest thing is all this new influx of data with all these devices we all now have on our wrist, and the challenges with ingesting all that. And so, at SAS, we're talking about this in regards to edge analytics or event stream processing. How do we process that so we're not throwing all that into an EMR and expecting a clinician to figure out what to do with it all? So there's a critical use case for AI there. And I think that kind of touches on Arun's question in the chat as well around what's happening on the regulatory landscape with regards to AI and medical devices, right? We're seeing some of this around software as a medical device, and FDA is starting to regulate that. And so a lot of that is what we have to be mindful of. And what I think goes back to my comment earlier, I think what's critical is for us as technologists is to make sure that what we're developing is easy to understand and is explainable. And let's get away from this black box AI, because that's where all these companies end up with a black eye. When someone reverse engineers an algorithm, large EMR companies notwithstanding, and recognize that it doesn't perform as expected. So I'd probably just kind of add that piece in there as far as a comment.
Sure. And I think maybe adding to that, and maybe also addressing one of the questions around NLP. So to the point that's being made that the EHR system is pretty fragmented, not interoperable, and a lot is in unstructured text. Again, what we get from a lot of the virtual interaction is the audio of the interaction between the provider and the patient. And if you transcribe that, where transcription technology has also gotten really good in the last few years, it gives you a text version of the interaction, where, of course, video is the next step, but text is the place to start. And you can do the NLP analysis on top of it to try to understand what's in the interaction and maybe make a more structured, informed form than the clinical record itself. The challenges with that is, of course, the data security. So, for example, the first step would always be redacting any personal identifying information from any of those transcripts before you could use it for any form of analysis, and making sure that that process is as precise as possible, and so that you have a clean set of data to work with. There's also all the taxonomy work, right? It is a whole dictionary of language that is very unique to this field that you have to train this nature of models on to make sure that you're learning the right things from this. And so there are a lot of challenges that go into this space, maybe as that might be a little bit unique within health tech as compared to other spaces that maybe require like an even higher degree of carefulness and, an eye for precision on things. The last layer is making sure that the learnings are really, really well validated. Kind of our take is, for a long time into this, you really need to make sure you have a human in the loop, the clinician in the loop, to make sure that the judgment and logic coming out of anything that we're learning from this data make sense to the medical professionals.
And to take that one step further to the decision support part. Oh, sorry.
No, I definitely want to request to most of the healthcare providers in this call, please move from the paper filling to digital as soon as we are in 2022. We are tired of with that. Okay, wherever we go, we are filling up multiple papers. I don't know. I know HIPAA compliance solve the problem. I understand, but still, it's 2022. We are digital. Still, it is not moving. The one industry which is moving very slowly in the digital area is healthcare. I don't know whether you agree with it or not. Telecommunication, video, audio, all the service is good, but still the data privacy, all the stuff, still we are not there. And that is what we are feeling, spending first 20, 25 minutes in the hospital or anywhere clinical, filling up the form. Just to inform Muthu, sorry, Ty, please go ahead, Ty. Sorry, I have interrupted some points.
Well, I was just going to take the second part of that, the CDS, the decision support from the NLP. And so this is something that we saw in radiology starting 10, 20 years ago, where it's like, if someone has back pain, they don't need an MRI 5 minutes later. Like that's not the best use of the resource. And so if we're able to accurately pull in NLP and get a good history, my back's been hurting for this long, I've had a fever, I had a car accident, I have cancer. Yes, get in for the MRI. But, I'm just kind of lazy, I don't work out, my back kind of hurts. No, don't get an MRI. So that's where the accurate NLP helps with the CDS part. And, neither of them are going to be the end all be all, but if each get great, then we can at least start to have some metrics that are more actionable for how providers use resources. And we all need to be good stewards of resources in pathology and radiology and labs, and just people's time. And so it would be awesome that if we can get NLP so dialed in that we can start to use the decision support tools the way that they're kind of supposed to be. Because right now, honestly, it's pretty tricky to get the full impact out of them.
No, absolutely. I have one question relevant to that. So when you talk about the data, NLP, a lot of things, even with your products, right? The data is shared to a lot of other companies too. This is my personal data, keep in mind. Okay, it's shared to a lot of things. From there, you are creating your analytics, all the stuff, and intelligence, right? So how secure it is? So is it good to share with, because think about Facebook or Google or Amazon, everyone is having your data. That is true. Your healthcare data or whatever. I'm not talking about the pure HIPAA data. Still, whatever information you are filling, searching, everything, they are relevant. They are suggesting you, hey, this is the best product, all the stuff, right? But you are also using, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone in this company, even Natasha or Mithul, Jaya, all of you using the data from the customers and on top of it applying the NLP or the intelligence. So how safe it is? Is it good to share with other companies this data or no?
Well, I can tackle that. It's a tough question because it's multifaceted and multi-dynamic just in terms of an answer. But I think one thing our government, at least the U.S. government, and I'm sure many other governments have done well, is be able to really enforce HIPAA and really force PHI and the good work that others have done just in terms of NLP and to be able to scrub and be able to develop anonymizers in terms of data and data acquisition. I think the regulation, the restrictions are all very appropriate. I think along with that measure, if we can continue to enhance those regulations, those restrictions, at least I know from our, how we train our algorithms at Proscia, we make a very concerted effort to address bias. We don't want to know one person versus another person, what demographic, what their name or sex or whatever it might be. We literally look at each record that comes through as an individual that has zero bias, and we try not to add that bias to any of our kind of diagnosis or any of our AI applications. And so, we have individuals on our team that make sure that PHI, that we are following and, we are ISO HIPAA compliant. And that allows us to be able to make a product that is scalable because it addresses each individual as an individual as opposed to treating certain demographics with a certain bias.
Got it.
I think the notion of data, of who owns the data, is critical. And any company who's dealing with data or is in this space, having someone with a background in ethics is probably a really, really good idea, because we're still uncovering challenges and misses, frankly, right? Where we didn't catch the bias that was in the data just by some of the ways that we're looking at things. And so that ethical use going forward is critical. And then, everyone wants to own the data. And naturally, we've got a bit of a conflict with that at times. I think the best path forward is really building a system where individuals are the owners of their own data. But what does that mean for a health system? Because are they the ones that are technically generating the data? Well, then you've got payers at play. You've got EMRs, right? I mean, you've got this whole potential Oracle acquisition, that's going to pull through. What does that mean for Oracle to have all that data? I don't know. Am I comfortable with that? Maybe I'll give another example for the companies on the call. Let's dissect Microsoft, who acquired Nuance a while back. That became attractive because Nuance acquired a startup called iScribes. Well, iScribes was working for years on basically what they were doing is recording the physician's visit, and then they were manually transcribing that with scribes back into the EMR. So they've been collecting all this data manually. They have all these recordings. Nuance acquired that, to start training that into more AI. And then, of course, that became very attractive for Microsoft, who now has all those recordings and is developing their clinical, I can't remember what they call it off the top of my head, their clinical artificial intelligence tool where it listens. It's a device that listens and automatically transcribes what's happening in the room into the electronic medical record. So there's a lot of great uses, but I think everyone are rightly bringing up the concerns with that of, we still need to be very mindful of what the implications for that could be. There are great uses, right, where we look at the research around it was done out of Chicago around zip codeomics, for instance, and identifying there can be up to a 20-year discrepancy in life expectancy just based off your zip code alone. Well, that then becomes a very important data point that we should probably be ingesting to understand the health of a population. Okay, but now for identifying down to a zip code where people live, like that now surfaces privacy implications. So it's a very difficult balance. And again, the point I want to leave everyone with is just it's critical to make sure that what you're developing is transparent and easily explainable.
Sure. Continue this area of question. I would like to hit a direct question to some of the people directly on their relevant area. To Natasha, how automation is going to impact the healthcare staffing shortage, short term and long term? Because you're relevant to this RPA, a lot of things you have doing. Why can't you go ahead?
Yeah, I think that that's a really important question. We look at, you see the Becker's reports that are coming out all the time, right? That this hospital is closed, this hospital is closed. We see so many acquisitions. And as we're closing hospitals, when we're looking at the triple aim and all these other things that are supposed to be improving access to healthcare for patients, if we cannot maintain being able to get these healthcare systems and providers paid for the services that they're providing to patients, because of, look at average days in AR sitting out there, we're going past timely filing to insurance carriers, and it ends up being bad debt, uncollectible, uncompensated care. And when that happens, then the physician simply doesn't have enough, or the hospital simply doesn't have enough revenue to keep the doors open, and that impacts patients directly. And so as we start looking at how we're developing robotic process automation to automate some of the tasks like verifying eligibility that would usually take 10 or 15 employees, and we can get it all done overnight and have a report and have it placed back into the patient's EMR, obtaining authorizations in advance, sending out, looking at the medical coding and doing some automated audits on that, and sending it where it's only the exceptions that are being handled by people. And kind of to, Ty and Rich's points is that it's supplementing the staff. It's not replacing them. There's always going to be a need for somebody to look over it. There has to be audit, compliance, quality. But if we can supplement that and do some of those menial, mundane tasks, just to help improve the way that we deliver care as a whole, I think that's how we're going to be able to get through this staffing shortage. And it's a phenomenon that so many have been trying to explain. Where are all the people going? Well, we don't know, but we know that bots don't get sick. They don't post about their peers on Facebook. They don't call in, and so I think it's something that's scalable. It's a way that we can really tackle this problem, and it's going to be good for 2022 and every year beyond. It's scalable. Important.
So I have been talking about RPA for the last 5 years. When RPA was started introducing, people started thinking, hey, it's going to limit the jobs, the back office, everyone, because hey, it's going to reduce the number of jobs. But it is reverse now. It is increasing more opportunity. People are saying it, including AI. Every technology, when it comes, there is always criticism will happen. Hey, it's going to, especially RPA. There is a reason why I'm talking about RPA, because it's doing a lot of your back office operation. I have seen live on multiple industries. It's really great improvement on the RPA side. Thank you, Natasha. Quickly, I would like to jump on to Jay directly one question. So what are the
chime in on what
yeah, please
just
go
said
ahead.
real quick?
Please.
I think that's a good point. What I want to impress on everybody who's joining in today is to be mindful of any additional workload or burden that you might be introducing through the use of your technology. I think like what Natasha is doing, and folks that are trying to optimize and make the operational space more efficient. In some ways, it's an easy way to get around some of the regulatory challenges of some of the more difficult clinical applications. The need to improve healthcare is really more on the operational side. If we're talking about $3.5 to $4 trillion of spend in the U.S. on healthcare, close to $800 billion, a quarter of that is attributed to administrative waste. 10 cents on every dollar actually goes to a clinician. So if we can cut out some of the waste in the system by optimizing and making the operational aspects, administrative tasks more efficient, that's where I think RPA holds a lot of promise. But again, we can't introduce some of that stuff at the expense of the patient's experience or the clinician's experience.
Agree.
Can I add one more thing on there, kind of bringing it all the way back from the decision support tools? To just maximize CPT codes, like obviously is not the right thing to do. That means we leave out some patients because not everyone has the right CPT code to get billed for that. And so with Natasha saying, like, you can't replace the person, it needs to augment that. And so if we have a great NLP to do a good decision support, to make the right patient get the right thing, and then build that properly, now we get a great flywheel that's going to be humming and take care of all the people that need to be. And then other that aren't using the AI for all those things can take care of the patients that don't quite fit into that yet. And so we can see how the flywheel can spin, and we can start to add more people to the flywheel so we can get equitable care for everybody. So all good points.
And I think maybe to try and tie in John Archer's question from the chat too around federated AI, I'd like to see if anyone else has an opinion on that.
I would like to come on, Rich. The questions will be taken a little later. So let me cover some of the actual questions first. I'm keep reading the side note of the questions. There's a very interesting questions are coming. Let's go for it, okay? But before that, I would like to first take some questions about the healthcare data. I would like to take Jayo on this one. What are the additional challenges you face when you work with healthcare, health data in particular, especially on the particular things?
Yeah, we've touched on some of this already today, but I think a lot of the problem stems from just the fragmentation in the field, and that there are definitely heroic efforts on trying to increase interoperability within the field. Today, we are in a pretty fragmented system where it's hard for a lot of the different data sources to talk to each other, to be joined with each other. There's a lot that's still unstructured. I mean, we're still getting records and sometimes that are, photocopies of PDFs, right? It's just a field where we're trying to deal with a lot of the historical data not being collected for the purpose that we're using a lot of that data today and trying to clean up some of that data. But it's also a field where that historical view across a patient's history is just so essential to understand kind of their health journey and continue to treat them. So it's not that you can kind of just start from the data that's being collected today and move forward. And so as a result of that, there's a lot of error in the data that we have, difficulties in kind of connecting those histories across patients as they've moved through different healthcare systems. And different pieces or nature of data in the system also tells very different stories. So, for example, there's a pretty big wealth of data within clinical billing claims, so clinical and pharmaceutical claims. And so they kind of tell you, if these are all the things that have been billed for, you can kind of piece together a history of the patient's past. But what that data does not tell you is the actual result of any tests or procedures that are being billed for. So, you might know that, I don't know, like an A1C test has been ordered, but you don't actually know the result of that. And so it's a partial story. And so you kind of have to put together a lot of these puzzle pieces together to get the full patient story. And in doing so, making sure you're not kind of accruing the error that's associated with all those joints and connections.
So great answer, Jeta. As we are a little bit shortage on the time, a lot of questions available. I have one very interesting question which I have to read now to go for my questions. What are some of the unique challenges in doing AI on health data, such that you cannot just apply what has been developed by other industries? It's very nice question, because we are thinking about AI is pretty common, but it's not. But what is the uniqueness? Who would like to take it? Jay, who would like to take it?
Sure, I can take a start. So, I mean, there's different challenges in every industry, right? A lot of, if you just look at where a lot of the maybe state-of-the-art data science companies in the tech industry, a lot of them are actually operational companies. A lot of them have the luxury of collecting their own data, and that is the data that they're then performing a lot of the AI on top of. Something that's nice in that model, so for example, Netflix collecting viewership data, or Google collecting search data, et cetera, is you have a lot of control over how that data is collected and stored, or even what data you're collecting in the first place. What makes health very different is that it is not just one source of data, or even one type of data, or one party collecting the data. And so per the previous answer, that adds a lot of challenge into the system. A second challenge that we've also already discussed is the need for like intense security and privacy and ethical management of the data that we're using. And then the third, which I think we've also already touched on, is that there is a very unique taxonomy that sits on top of health data, and a very specific know-how that sits within the clinical world, that you really need to tap into their specific training to understand the meaning behind a lot of the data that is collected. But yeah, would love to hear from others of what the additional challenges are.
Yeah, I think too, all of those are very valid points. And while we've made tremendous strides and lots of evolution in AI, RPA, all of the machine learning, et cetera, there's still so much more to be learned, and things that can be improved significantly. When we look at OCR specifically, it's good. It gives us some, but it can be quite the challenge. I don't know how much experience you all have with OCR, but that's definitely the Achilles heel for us.
Absolutely. Rich, Ty, any points about this one?
Well, I mean, it just from the beginning I said, picking specific problems to maximize a solution for it. And so if someone has a really big pain point with this one thing, character recognition, it's get from old PDFs to new stuff, whatever the big pain point is, if you're going to put enough resources, you collect the data and improve that. And so, as you said, there's so many things to work on. It sometimes can get a little intimidating, but pick something and improve it.
Absolutely. So, Mithul, I don't know whether did you hear the question or not. I'm really expecting, based on your product and the industries. Did you hear the questions, or do you want me to?
No, I'm sorry. I've been having connection issues. Can you repeat that again?
So what are some of the unique challenges in doing AI on health data, such that you cannot just apply what has been developed by other industries? Because Natasha and Jayo, they mentioned that yes, definitely it is on the, you cannot, privacy of one thing definitely is there, right? That's a very important uniqueness for healthcare industry. None of the other industry have it. So yeah, please go ahead, Mithu.
Yeah, no, I think it was mentioned earlier, and I'm not sure who mentioned it, but just in terms of human error, we received a large amount of image data plus metadata, we use both elements to be able to train our algorithms. And what is required, in order for us to be able to validate what we receive, we don't take it at face value. We need annotators. We need individuals who can actually validate, and oftentimes a panel of experts, specialists, oftentimes physicians, looking through that data to actually be able to validate what we actually have in the diagnosis that's being provided. And so, the worst thing that we can do as individuals, professionals in the AI sector is introduce products that is, we're getting garbage in and we're providing garbage out. We need to be able to take the time to be able to actually annotate, be able to validate what we're actually training the algorithm, and to be able to provide that diagnosis or prediction score or whatever the metric might be, so that we have we have assurance, we're gaining the trust of the physician or the lab technician who are using the product. I think Rich was talking about black box and the kind of spooky terms of AI just in general, and there's a lot of negative terms that are associated with AI, and so as professionals, we have really our opportunity for our first impression, and that's going to be really important that we get this right. And so by providing products that address and garner the trust of physicians and others who use it is going to be really important.
Perfect. I think we are reaching the time of 10:30. I'm going to start with more Q&A session going forward. Before that, Rich, do you have any points to cover to move on these questions, or should I proceed?
No, not on. And I think that was all really good. I think, I was going to try to go back and just touch on, because I know we were very much focused on healthcare delivery space, and Chatri, you were asking kind of upfront about, well, what about life sciences, and Arun kind of chimed in on that as well. And that's honestly where SaaS has been much more focused in the past years. And we're seeing explosive growth. Every clinical trial goes through SaaS's AI platform to validate the clinical trial when they submit to the FDA. And what we're seeing now, and all of these life science companies and pharmaceutical companies, in addition to helping with things like supply chain when COVID kind of first hit, now the topic is around virtual clinical trials and real world evidence and digital twins particularly. So this concept of digital twins, I think we're seeing evolve in the life science space. It's going to become and very much be applicable to the healthcare provider and delivery space as well. So just a couple of things to look out there as far as how we see some of these industries and sectors merging.
Yeah, especially when you talk about this digital twin, 4 more technologies are really booming in this healthcare side. One is definitely AR, VR. A lot of augmented reality, virtual reality is going to boom. And definitely the other thing is, metaverse is part of it, is coming up very fast, picking up now. And the second thing is definitely a digital twin. Digital twin is picking up a lot of space in the healthcare side, which I'm seeing we have been working on some projects. And the other thing is blockchain. Blockchain for the security aspect, a lot of companies are trying to bring blockchain into the system, how they can secure the compliances. So that is one of the security aspect point people are trying to embed the blockchain. Some of this technology are really booming into this industry. Apart from all, in cybersecurity space, for especially healthcare, to avoid the hit, AI is really helping a lot. That is also going really well. I think a lot of new technologies are evolving, but at the end of the day, the core system, AI intelligence, is very important for blending with all these technologies. So great. Let me go with the questions. Let me take Arun Bol. He pinged the question, could you share your thought on regulatory landscape on AI in medical devices? Who would like to take it? Anyone?
Well, I'll just go back to the thing I kind of mentioned before on the radiology piece. So it was really tricky because if we really want to leverage machine learning, we want to have a continuous training and let it learn. But there's obviously some risk to that if the guardrails aren't predefined. And so the original FDA approval processor had to have a specific outcome based on what your training and testing data was. And so people in the industry feel like that's pretty slow. Like how do we get faster if we have to keep applying for FDA approval? So hopefully they're getting better at that. But obviously, as a patient, like I want to be safe too. So just from the radiology part for the FDA approval, like I know that there's some push and shove and pull and push from all areas, and it's just so new. We don't know. I mean, we have to figure this out. We're figuring it out as we go. So in that space, I know that there's grumblings on both sides to make it faster or safer or both. So, but as far as other ones, I don't have enough. I'll have to defer to other people on the call for that.
Any other points? Regulatory landscape on AI in medical devices? Any other point from anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I can just add, I think, this is a classic case of, where software innovation thought process is ahead, and maybe many years, if not longer, just in terms of how the regulatory landscape is actually, keeping up with innovation and with, how fast AI is actually moving. Radiology space, similar to Ty, that there are some amount of clearances, at least from the FDA perspective and CE, IVD perspective, just in getting products out into the market, AI products out into the market. And I think that hopefully paves the way for other types of AI products, specifically in pathology, which Proscia is involved in, that it leaves a precedence for how testing, how performance testing, how validation actually can occur. It is slower, but I feel like there is progress, at least in certain sectors of the healthcare industry.
And I'll tell you that these agencies are trying. They are mindful of that. They're trying to speed it up. SAS works very closely. We do a lot with these agencies, and they're looking at ways. Okay, well, how do they start thinking about and how can we build systems? Leveraging AI and RPA and all those things to help speed up those processes as well. So that is happening. It's just happening at a government's pace.
Sure. Team, I think a lot of audiences are pinging in discussion as well. Please, if you have questions, please type that in the Q&A session, because I'm seeing both sides of Q&A. Please type in the Q&A. Okay, let me take the other question. What are your thoughts on clinical decision support and NLP? Who would like to take it?
We sort of did that one a little bit ago.
Sorry?
We talked about that before.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Okay. So, could any of the panelists touch on how specifically AI is impacting real-time in rehabilitation and maintenance of the patient as it relates to physical therapist and serving as a patient advocate?
So I haven't done it specifically. It seems like they want some real specific stuff. But what I can say is I've seen a few that use machine learning to get body positioning. And so what that is helpful for the physical therapist is range of motion. So if you say your shoulder hurts and you do your little thing and you're like, 90 degrees range of motion or 120 or 180, like those are data points that the physical therapist can use. And possibly there's other data points they can capture. But I mean, if you just Google like, physical therapy AI, there's a few of them out there and you can see what they do.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Benjamin, I'm glad you asked that question. My wife's a physical therapist. And so in particular, I've been watching this space around rehab and physical therapy, a discipline that historically you thought would always need to be in person. When COVID hit, we forced a lot of change, right? And the glue that held the system together is no longer location. And so she shifted and she focuses, let's qualify that. She focuses in geriatrics and falls prevention and Parkinson's. And she shifted the way she practiced into delivering physical therapy remotely. She loved it. Her patients loved it. There were connection challenges, sure. Her outcomes were improved because now she was seeing them interact in their home environment. I think what Ty is mentioning around being able to layer on something to help her do some of her assessments. So when you're trying to evaluate range of motion to get down the precise degrees of which that might be changing, that is a little difficult to see through video. But there are AI applications that we've been working on with clients, as well as some of the companies that are up and coming in the space. The one I think of is Hinge Health. There's a couple others out there that are doing work in this space. And honestly, I and my wife don't feel threatened by that. Again, it goes back to this notion of top of license. If we're predicting huge shortages of clinicians, I think it was 13 million or something by the World Health Organization by 2033 or something like that. It's all about what can we automate, and then what can we then triage up to an actual in-person visit. Who needs to be seen at the clinic for the more complex cases? And so that's where I think Jayadita and what she's doing, her company, then becomes very valuable in helping route that care.
Yeah, there's a post-prediction. A lot of post-prediction algorithms are there, open post, multiple things. They're also using this one. Yeah, please go ahead.
And then the back end of that, when we talk about physical therapy, the AI and RPA and some of those other things that we're looking at also gives us the ability to look at how many timed procedures, how many modalities until the patient has been treated, how many, usually when we're requesting authorizations, you're requesting for, 11 to 16 visits at a time. And so when we have bots that are able to go ahead and get those authorizations in place in advance, then we're talking about, yes, the shortage in clinicians, but then also the shortage in the back office and the cost savings and being able to automate that piece.
And then just to add on to that comment made by Rich, it's exactly that, right? So I think there's a lot of good AI being used like in the actual physical therapy and the treatment aspects of things, but also in the routing aspects. So for example, within Included, we both deliver virtual care, but also route members to in-person care. So we use our algorithms to understand when is a patient more suited for one form of care or another, or even a combination of the two. We also both route between, so we actually recommend members to go to Hinge, but also could recommend members to go to a PMNR or a physical therapist, right? It's also a decision point of, how do you route yourself through these various options that might be available.
And the last comment I might make, just because I've seen a couple of people who are in the payer space, a couple of you from Olive out there, I see you, is to also be mindful of, this healthcare spend. Also, a lot of it is so focused on actual treatment and cure. And so, but when we look at the geriatric or the elderly population, oftentimes it's just about preservation of function, or less, right? Like we're trying to minimize the decline. And that, if I have to speak up for my wife, that's the frustration. And so we can apply analytics and all these things to it, but she's still fighting, Natasha, right, to try and get approval for the next 4 visits, just so she can minimize the decline of the patient, but has to fight with the payer because they want to see a progression, right? And so there's still aspects around the system for that we need to figure out how to solve for and bring light to that even doing that is still, for the payers, are still financially beneficial to them as well.
Yeah. And I love that it comes full circle when we talk about, each one of us is taking a different aspect of the patient care. When we talk about just the physical therapy piece, for instance, how every one of us, it just comes full circle. It's a cycle, and it's amazing that we can work together, share our thoughts, share our ideas. And then when we come together, that it puts, step 1 with step 2 with step 3, how we are navigating patient care and funneling them to the appropriate places, and then how we're treating those patients and being able to give them the care that they need, and then how we're getting the providers of care reimbursed for that. And I just really love the way it just comes full circle.
Okay, thanks for all of the answers. And the other question which I'm moving now is, anyone solution today leveraging federated AI where the models, weights, parameters are shared and not the data?
This has gotten a lot of press in the radiology space as well because it's much easier to send the actual pictures than all the surrounding DICOM patient data. But I do want to just add one thing that while that's an awesome idea, like literally still I have written prescriptions scanned in asking for a CD of the MRI when they're done. And so the system in America, at least, is not ready for widespread federated data sharing. Now, in places in Northern California, Chicago, Boston, like they're making the systems to make the federated sharing like work. But just understand, like I'm thankful that I still get to see this ridiculousness on a day-to-day basis, so I don't get too far ahead of myself to think that we're ready for federated data exchanged now. So totally love it, and I would love to see it expand. But we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Go ahead, Natasha.
Sorry, just one sentence. So it's just amazing how many times people are still asking, what is HIE? And these are like the top level people at hospitals. And so I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, and I think what I was reading in John's question, I think it just clarifies, is asking more specifically around, is there an opportunity to federate the models and the actual AI algorithms? And I think the challenge there is every health system's data are structured differently, right? Everyone went in and customized their own EMRs. And so I would love to see that. Trust me, I think that would make a lot of our jobs a lot easier. But it's like every time you go into a client, it's a custom project to be able to have to customize that algorithm and tailor it to their data. Do I think there's maybe opportunity to kind of apply AI to that process? Yeah, absolutely. But I think we're a few steps away.
I haven't part of the CompTIA Council, AI Council, so we have some discussion around this area, especially how to federate the models to share across multiple people. But it's when we had a lot of experts discussion, it's really not easy to go, but eventually one day it will be there. But if that comes, it's beautiful. I love this question definitely. Okay, moving to the next questions. Okay, it is sorry, I missed the name. John Archer was the one. Good question. The next question is Arun Bol again. With evolving of AI in healthcare, how much it is going to impact on clinical trials? That being on-site clinical trial versus virtual clinical trials. Good question. Who would like to take it? I think it's more relevant to.
I can take a stab at that. I think a short answer is yes. There's going to be a tremendous amount of impact that AI could provide, just in terms of where AI can crunch data, be able to provide gather a large sum of data, and be able to provide a distilled version, filter of information that's relevant for pharmas who are running clinical trials, to be able to be really precise in being able to reach out to the right individuals for that clinical trial. I think what happens right now, or what has historically happened, is that there's large sums of individuals that are at the end of the trial probably excluded out. So where companion diagnostics and where AI can actually take that information, actually provide the pharma company or whoever's running these trials a more distilled and specific and a predictive element to be able to not only choose the population that's going to best succeed for this trial, but also be able to make a prediction based on assumptions and some evidence that here's what we're predicting, just in terms of where these individuals will actually yield in terms of this clinical trial. So I think companion diagnostics, specifically in the pathology field and in others, will play a very big role for pharma companies in their clinical trials.
And I think bringing in new types of data, particularly social determinants and those types of data into clinical trials is critical. And I think this is also where we tie back into that notion of the digital twin, right? And so if we can reduce the trial size as we get better with generating synthetic data and creating digital twins, no longer do we have to hold out this section of the population that we're going to give a placebo to. We can try everyone on the new therapy and then compare that to a digital twin for the placebo comparison, for instance.
Synthetic data is not going to be that relevant because this is more health data, right? Because if you talk about other technology, makes sense to me, but it's more health-related data. Do you think the synthetic data will really helpful here, that bring the accuracy, the testing?
Yeah. The short answer is yeah. And all the pharmaceutical companies that we're working with say yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sounds great. I have $1 million question. Okay. So hope, I don't know who has answer for this one. When COVID will end? Who has the answer? I don't know. Any kind of prediction? I know you guys will have been working with.
We're into new normal, right? I mean, I envision this thing coming to something where we settle into a norm where we kind of treat it like the flu. We're going to see multiple variants continue, but I think the lesson in the severity. This is just me speaking. I'm not speaking right on anyone's behalf, but just kind of the way my perspective is. That also just means, right, that we've just got to move forward as if this is the new norm, and then let's be pleasantly surprised if not.
Okay, it's going to continue. The answer is it's not going to end. It's continue like a flu model. Okay. The new variant, my Omicron, is a very less impact version because it's losing its power. I see that because I got faced it. So I'm luckily faced Omicron, not the original COVID variant. Okay, there's no answer. Continue it. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. I definitely like this question written by Hedi Razavi. How do you say AI helping chronic health illness? It's a very tricky question too from my view.
So I mean, I'll just kind of swing back in. Like, you got to pick the specific disease. So congestive heart failure, like, how do you get the fluid out of the lungs? Like, you got to pick the disease and pick the problems and maximize for. So many companies are doing a really great job of doing that. Scales in the home to see if they're gaining weight, to see if they're retaining water, that it could be stage F. And so I mean, there's many silos that are working to get these specific diseases under control, and then we can hopefully connect them all kind of at the end. But yes, we can, and yes, we are, and we have a long way to go.
I will add to the fact that AI is kind of playing into the actual treatment of aspects of chronic health illness. We sit a little bit upstream of that, trying to use data to identify just which members could use a longitudinal care plan to help with management through their chronic illness. So, who might require more frequent medication reviews, who might require kind of check-ins around behavioral health status, et cetera, as they're working through the management of the chronic health illness and making sure that we're pairing them with the right type of professionals to check in with them regularly.
Got it.
It's a critical thing and a critical lens for the patients to consider. One of my colleagues is an actuary, and so we work very closely with a lot of the major payers. And so when we're looking at risk modeling in particular, everything that we're talking about and all these new fancy digital virtual ways to deliver care, we can't necessarily just make that available to everybody because everybody doesn't need it. There's a place within their healthcare journey in which it makes the most sense. We don't want to deliver something too early, and obviously we don't want to deliver it too late either. So AI playing a role there, and again, that's why I get excited about companies like what JD is doing to helping navigate that and identify when at the right moment is it time to intervene.
Sure. I think we have 8 more minutes, but I would like to give a space to all of the speakers. Do you like to bring any special question in this panel which you are really interested to bring in?
I think we covered an amazing amount of ground in the last hour. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, there's a lot we are covering it. And there's still one question I would like to take it as well. What are ways you can use AI to improve diversity and inclusion in healthcare?
Well, for one, just capturing more granular data is helpful. We touched on, like, zip codes is one way to know, but we know that there's disparity, and we know that there are large areas that need improvement, and that could be based on all kinds of variables. And so I think we need a little bit more granular data, and then we need to align incentives to improve. And so hopefully by collecting the data, we can start to at least uncover where we need to work.
And I think if we look at the first speaker of the day, right, where we have the deaf community and some of the AI technologies that specific companies, and to Ty's point, pick your niche, pick your market, be really, really great at what you do. And then we come together like we are today and we share the information with one another and kind of bring it back together as a whole. But I think, just like that first speaker that we heard from this morning, in that one particular market, they represent something really important. And while I may not be as well versed in that, I know that they're handling it. They're doing a really great job, and that we get to learn from that. We get to benefit from it when we come together. It's just really great.
Yeah, I would like to take a moment to thank Greg as well. Really, I'm very impressed with the way he presented today as a group work and confident. I really want to, I don't know whether he's there or not. Thank you so much, Greg, on joining and presenting a wonderful session and the way you presented. Yeah, please go ahead, Jay. Yeah.
+1 to his talk. So one way in which we think through diversity and inclusion is, so traditionally as a company, we spend a lot of time trying to use longitudinal provider data to assess provider quality. So which providers are more safe at performing or treating a certain patient population, which providers have more of a experience in different areas, track record of kind of delivering clinical outcomes for different patient use cases. As we extend that problem, I think subsetting it to different subpopulations and communities kind of split by different demographics is an interesting way of figuring out kind of which provider pockets are going to be best at treating different groups in more inclusive ways. So for example, a subset of our company actually manually went through and had a very, very stringent process of calling doctors' offices and finding out what they treat and talking to patients who've been there to understand which best treated the LGBTQ plus population. And through that, we got this massively manually curated, you can call it a training set of which providers, have helped make that group, feel like they're getting equitable care. We can then use that type of data to see if we can find additional patterns through it, kind of grow that and see if we can kind of continue to understand which providers are providing, quality care to different types of populations, and try to make sure we're routing, again, those patients to places where they're going to get the best care for them.
Great answer. The last question before I close this, especially on the RPA side. What are the use cases that are most successful for RPA in healthcare revenue cycle management? Natasha, would you like to take it?
Yeah. So a lot of them have been around payment posting. We know that with the importable 835 data files, we have seen a lot of that is kind of automated, but there's still a very manual process at the end of that. But then when we talk about paper again, so we've got all of our claims go out on a standard HCFA 1500 claim form, right? Or it goes out on the 837 data set, or it goes out on the UB claim forms for facilities. So those are the three formats that you can send it. There's nothing else that's acceptable. But when we look at EOBs that come back from payers, every single payer has a different format that they send it in. And then the provider's office has to take all of those, 8,000 different formats and somehow get it all into their system in one way. And so that's been a challenge for all of our clients. And so we've been able to use both OCR for turning those paper EOBs into 835 data files, or using robotic process automation. So payment posting has been hugely successful. But then when we look at denial appeals, and they're handled one by one by a team of 200 to 500 sometimes users that are just appealing those denials. So if we can put together a data set of rules when it's denied for this particular thing and it's for this particular carrier, and we know exactly what they're needing, go and obtain medical records, print it to a PDF and either upload it to the payer portal, e-fax it, or print it in the middle of the night so it's not holding up the printer for the users during the day, those types of things. Like I mentioned before, eligibility, authorizations, etc.
Now I'm really scared that he's taking away my job. Okay.
Oh no! No, supplementing. We always have to have that element of quality, and there's always going to be exceptions. And then I think something that's really important for the healthcare community to understand is that now we are elevating the knowledge and expertise of the users from a data entry type position to now they're managing these processes. They're managing the bots essentially, or these digital employees. They're making sure that everything is running smoothly. If there's something that's not working appropriately, they're auditing it the same way that they would have performed the function to begin with. And so it's really important to know that we will never, ever get away from that human element. It's absolutely imperative, but it really helps us to be able to keep up with the volumes when we've got so many variances and variables in healthcare.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I think we are up to the time. Thank you so much for all of you joining this call, and it's a wonderful panel discussion, sharing all of your thoughts and wonderful information as well. Thanks, Nitin, for inviting us. Looking forward to seeing you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.